The Pharmacy on Today, sponsored by Boots.
Now, of course, autumn is upon us. We are heading into the flu season and we are going to talk, of course, about the flu vaccine.
Now, joining us from Dublin is pharmacist Heather Feeney. Heather, thank you very much for being on the show. I know we ask you this question every year, but I think it is probably more important this year with COVID-19 and everything. Tell us again, what exactly is the flu virus?
Yeah, no problem. So the flu is a highly infectious illness that's caused by the influenza virus. So it's seasonal, so that's why we're always talking about it October through to April. And the symptoms that you can kind of expect from the flu virus would be things like high fever, so that's a high temperature over 38 degrees, a cough, sometimes people can get quite a bad headache, and a general kind of feeling of achiness and exhaustion. So now the flu does range from being quite mild in its severity, which is the vast majority of cases, but can have more severe complications. And that's why it's so important that we do have a good vaccination programme in Ireland and that we do get vaccinated. So there are certain groups that are more at risk of getting the flu vaccine, and certainly very important that those individuals do get vaccinated.
And I suppose this year more than ever, as Dáithí was saying there, we are hearing, of course, ads on the radio and whatever to get vaccinated. The health authorities are actually saying that all people within certain groups should get the flu vaccine. Do you think we should all get it as a matter of course this year because of COVID?
Well, almost everyone can get the flu vaccine, but there are certain groups that are prioritised, or there are certain groups that it's very important to get the flu vaccine where it's a strong recommendation. So those would be individuals over 65, women who are pregnant, children aged 2 to 12, and then those suffering from a range of chronic conditions. So they're all outlined on hse.ie, but they're conditions like chronic heart disease, chronic respiratory illness, renal illness, diabetes, so quite a broad range of illnesses. And then there's also kind of a lot of people who are recommended to get the flu vaccine because of the environments that they work in, so like your healthcare workers, your carers, and of course nursing home residents. So yeah, there's a broad range of people who are really strongly recommended to get it, but almost anyone can get the flu vaccine.
Heather, is there a special vaccine for children?
There is. So this year the HSE are funding a vaccine from age 2 to 12, which is a nasal vaccine, so a little bit more palatable for children. It's spray up each nostril, and we're beginning that service in Boots towards the end of this month, October. So the stock is coming into stores, and you'll find that lots of pharmacies and GPs are making that service available towards the end of this month.
Yeah, and we should say as well, because I know it's rolling out next week, especially in the GP surgery, it's certainly arriving there, and you can actually get it for free, of course, for all kids between those ages.
So it's free for all children aged 2 to 12. So it's an important group that we actually do require to vaccinate. So children can transmit the virus quite readily, but also children are at a higher risk of having the more severe complications. So in most cases it will be mild, but they do fall into an at-risk category. So really important that we take care of the kids.
Yeah, Heather, because the majority of us are wearing masks and we are washing our hands 10, 12, 20 times a day like we should be, do you think there'll be less flu virus around because of that?
I mean, it can only help. So there's a lot that we can do, and the best thing that we can do is to get the flu vaccine. But we are really behaving ourselves right now to take care of each other. So things like washing your hands, maintaining social distance, wearing masks, and generally kind of behaving with good COVID etiquette, that is definitely going to help the transmission of the flu virus this year.
Yeah. A lot of people will mix up symptoms. I mean, the reality is for all of us now, if you have any kind of flu-like thing again, they are, you get kind of nervous, you might have COVID. So you're going to just explain to us the difference, the symptoms between a cold, a flu and COVID.
Yeah, so there are some common symptoms. So the likes of your cough, your fever, those would be common to your flu and to the coronavirus. The best way to differentiate it will be that with the coronavirus, there's two symptoms that are quite specific to the coronavirus, being the shortness of breath and also the loss of taste or smell, or the changed sensation of taste or smell. And so those are quite specific to the coronavirus. Then in addition, with the flu, you can expect a headache, which would be far less common with the coronavirus. However, it's really important to take the public health advice. So if you are suffering from any symptoms such as your cough, high temperature, shortness of breath, or indeed the kind of sensations with taste and smell, to get onto your GP straight away for advice, and they'll send you for a coronavirus test, and obviously you'll need to self-isolate. So you don't really need to diagnose yourself as such. You can get support from your pharmacist and your GP, but really important that we continue to follow that public health advice.
Heather, it's easy to see how people would be worried seeing that chart there, how close, say, you'd have the coronavirus and the flu, some of the symptoms. Really, it's only the taste and the breath. They're the only two main differences.
Yeah, so those are kind of the differences that are more specific to the coronavirus. So certainly it's really important that if you do experience any of those symptoms, you self-isolate to take care of those around you, and you contact your GP to see if you need to be progressed for a test or to get further advice.
Yeah, I suppose we should say as well, we forget how dangerous the flu is, especially if you're in an at-risk group. It's life-threatening. So it is important for people to get the vaccine. Does the vaccine cover certain strains? How is the vaccine made up? Does it cover certain strains that's coming at the time, or just to tell people out there?
Of course, so that's why it's so important to get the flu vaccine every year, because it does change every year. So this year's vaccine is quadrivalent, so it addresses the 4 main strains that are likely to be circulating this year. And there's a lot of work done by the World Health Organization all year long to predict what those strains are going to be. So yeah, it does change every year. You do require to get it every year, and it does get updated with whatever strains are likely to be circulating.
Heather, I'd imagine with the vaccine you'd be advising people as well to take maybe some supplements coming into the winter as well, and to have a good healthy diet and plenty of exercise.
Absolutely. So there's loads of things we can do ourselves to keep ourselves healthy. So things like vitamin C are really important to boost immunity, which you can get through dietary means, but it's also possible to supplement those, and you can talk to your pharmacist about what would be available in terms of supplementation, and then also just to keep warm and take care of yourself over the colder period now that's upcoming.
Heather, just finally, wondering when we should get the flu vaccine and how long does it take to actually kick in before you're protected?
Yeah, so it's always advisable to get it as early as possible in the season. Obviously, this year there's a great demand for the flu vaccine, and we're seeing it along, I suppose, across all demographics. So there has been an unprecedented demand, but it's advisable to get it as soon as possible. And then in terms of your immunity is generally conferred 10 to 14 days after receiving the vaccine. So as soon as possible. But as I said earlier, the flu kind of season does run through April. So if you're talking November, early December, that's still an appropriate time to book in for your appointment for the flu vaccine.
Heather, one very quick one. Is there anyone who shouldn't get the vaccine?
There is some, now it's almost everyone should, there are some kind of exclusion criteria around allergies. So if someone has an allergy to a vaccine before, if they've suffered previous anaphylaxis, they may need to get it in a very controlled scenario outside of a GP surgery or outside of a pharmacy. But no, for the most part, it's something that's available to everyone. And if you have any queries, you can just contact your pharmacy or GP.
Great. Heather, thanks as
Thank
always
you
for joining us. And of course, if you have any health concerns, always consult your GP. And if you want more information on what Heather discussed with us today, head over to our Facebook page, which is RTE Today.
The Pharmacy on Today. Sponsored by Boots.